I'm sure that everybody saw Lilith's video the other day announcing that two new commanders will be coming to the game. The first one will be a rally commander named Ashurbanipal, an Assyrian king commander, and the second one will be Herman Prime, another prime commander, and they're both going to be archers. So in today's video, I'm going to be predicting what do I think these commanders will bring? How much damage factor? Will they be single target or AoE? Will they have unique buffs and debuffs? So if you want to know my predictions of what Ashurbanipal and Herman Prime will bring to Rise of Kingdoms, and maybe even just allow you to prepare to invest in them, and if it might interest you, you want to stick around till the end of the video. Now, before we get into the juicy stuff about my skill predictions, I'm going to start off with two quick things. And the first one is a very quick disclaimer. And that disclaimer is, I don't actually know what's coming to the game. I don't have any inside information. This is just purely guesswork. I don't know what's coming. But anyways, guesswork can still be interesting because sometimes that guesswork can be accurate, and if it is accurate, it allows people to somewhat prepare for what these commanders may bring, and allow them to decide what to invest in, because if you're waiting for a commander to release, it's always nice to have some idea of maybe 10% of their kit, rather than knowing nothing at all. And from previous experience doing some guessing on what commanders bring, I pretty much called most of Zulang's kit. I said 2000 damage, 5 target AoE, I said it would have a debuff, so I had a ton of things right in Zulang's kit. I had some of his stats down there, so I did call some of Zulang's kit. I also called a little bit of a few other commanders' kits, but really, I'm going to be mainly looking at Herman today. So I'm going to try and call what I think will come in his kit, and then we'll try and predict what will come in Ashurbanipal's kit. And this will be off previous trends, previous commander releases, the damage factor we've been seeing recently, and what I think Lilith will need archers to have to be in a good meta position. So I'm going to base my predictions off what archers need and previous releases for other commanders. That's pretty much what I'm going to base it off, and it's all just guesswork. I don't have any inside information, like I said before. So now that we have all the disclaimers out of the way, let's start predicting Herman Prime's kit. And the first thing I'd like to predict about Herman Prime is what his active skill will be. And to begin with, I think it's going to be a single target skill, because we just had an AoE secondary added very recently, and there's a lot of AoE commanders for archers. You got Zulang, YSG, Nebu, even Cyrus has AoE, Artemisia, so many commanders with archers just have AoE, and I don't think that currently they need another AoE commander, they more need another primary commander. So I believe that Herman Prime is going to have a single target damage factor, probably with the same rage requirement of 1000. We don't really see with the archers that they have lower rage requirements. It's always sat around that 1000 range. Never ever has it really gone below. It has gone above once with Edward of Woodstock, but that's it. So rage requirement 1000, and the single target damage, I'm going to guess within the realm of 3000, maybe 2700, because we saw with Hao Che being the most recent cavalry primary commander, he had 2700 damage factor, and the thing to note with Hao Che being, he also has a shorter rage cycle, so for that reason, it wouldn't be too crazy to think Herman Prime may have 3000 damage factor, and the reason I also like to believe that is Lilith often does push newer levels of damage factor with archer commanders, because Lilith likes to push those archer commanders as being more damage rather than being tanky, rather than being fast. They're just pure DPS. So I think that 3000 direct damage factor single target isn't too far out of the question with Herman. And I also think it's going to be damage factor, not smite damage, because you know Ashurbanipal is going to have archer, conquering, and skill trees. So I don't think they're going to release Herman with a smite skill, since none of the commanders would really synergize with them, because a lot of them have skill damage taken increases and skill damage reductions, or that doesn't necessarily work with a smite commander, and the rest of the archer kit is so skill damage oriented, it wouldn't really make sense to make Herman a smite commander. So I'm predicting active skill damage 2700 to 3000. The other part of his active skill I'm going to predict is either a silence, a rage reduction, or a normal attack reduction. If they add a rage reduction, it's probably going to be upwards of 150 to 200 rage reduction. I don't think it would be 100, because we've got commanders like Nebuchadnezzar who have 100 rage reduction in a passive slot, so if they give Herman a rage reduction, it's probably going to be a fairly large amount, maybe an AoE debuff if anything as a rage reduction, since that is unique, we haven't seen it before. If they add a silence, 3 seconds is certainly reasonable. Guan, you had 3 seconds in an AoE, and if they want to bring a bit more silence back into the meta, Herman Prime would be a good way to do it, because yes, Guan Yu is still very powerful, but I've noticed a lot of free-to-play players don't really get him anymore. Most players will go for Lao Che. So Guan's silence is starting to fall out of the meta a bit. And if they want to bring the silence back, they may put it onto Herman Prime, which would obviously give him a lot of value because silence is valuable. The final thing that could happen is that they add a normal attack damage dealt reduction. And the reason this would be good is if they want Herman to go against the meta rather than going into the meta, they'll probably give him that reduction to fight against the Lao Che and the Gorgo combination that's currently very strong. So if they give Herman a normal attack damage dealt reduction as a debuff to the opponents, I reckon it'll be in the realm of around 35%, and that's definitely going to do a number on Lao Che's and Gorgos, because Gorgo definitely dominant on the open field with Lao Che, and if you give them a normal attack damage reduction, it is going to affect their smite damage quite a bit. So it would give Herman that effectiveness to go against the current infantry meta, and if they want to do that and they want to make infantry not as dominant, they could definitely give Herman that normal attack reduction on an active skill. If I were to give a final proper prediction for Herman's active skill, the full thing I would guess, 3000 damage factor single target with probably a rage reduction or a silence. I don't think I could go in between both of those. I think normal attack damage dealt, they wouldn't really mess around with that yet. They might wait for maybe the calves to do that, or even the next archer cycle before they fiddle around with smite damage and reducing it. I think it wouldn't be too out of the question though to give Herman a silence or a rage reduction, and possibly even both somewhere throughout his kit. So now that we've discussed Herman's active skill and what I think it's going to be, I'm going to discuss his next 3 skills, which will be open field related, and what stats do I reckon will occur across his next 3 skills, because I'm not going to go over each one individually, it'd be almost impossible to guess, but across his 3 skills we can make some assumptions as to what stats he may have by the stats we've seen recently, and also what he currently has in his kit. And the first thing I'm going to say that Herman will almost definitely have is some form of a normal attack damage taken reduction, and the reason that's the case is because, well, I think they do want him to somewhat counter smite, just nowhere near as strong as giving them a debuff. So I think that a Herman with some type of normal attack damage taken reduction would A, make him a very tanky commander, which if you want him to be a primary commander would be good, and B, would allow him to go against that smite meta a little bit. Not absolutely dominate it, but still be powerful against it. So I don't think it's crazy to assume Herman may have upwards of a 30% normal attack damage taken reduction, maybe as a permanent thing, maybe not. It could be like Boudica Prime, where just being on the map, he takes that less normal attack. Or it might be a buff that comes in every now and again. Maybe whenever you take any form of damage factor, the next basically few turns you take reduced normal attack. That's certainly a possibility, and it would be good against Gorgo Lao Che especially, which is currently destroying a lot of archers. The other thing I think Herman would have as a primary commander, if we want him to work well with Zhu Lang, is probably somewhere in the realm of 15 to 20% March speed, maybe as a permanent thing, maybe not, and the reason I also think that he'd have March speed is his epic commander self also has 10% March speed, so it wouldn't be too far out of the question to presume that Herman will have some amount of March speed. I don't think that he'd be absolutely dominant on the amount of March speed he'd have, somewhere around Boudica or even Henry's range of March speed, except I think that his March speed for Herman would be on Alliance territory as well, not just an outside of Alliance territory thing, because Herman would probably be one of the meta open field commanders. You'd want to use him almost all the time. The other things we could predict with Herman is possibly some amount of health or defense. Maybe not health because we just had Zhu Lang with health, but if they really wanted a powerful archer commander, 20%, 15% health, any amount of health would be good on him, and it would allow him to synergize a little bit well with commanders like YSG and commanders like possibly even Boudica, who really lack on that health stat and really benefit from it. So giving him health wouldn't be too out of the question, but I don't think they would since they gave Zhu Lang health. But then again, it's still possibly an option. They could do double health commanders, that's not too insane, and it would still work with Zhu Lang, even if he had some amount of health. And then if he had defense, that would work very well with Zhu Lang, because we have pretty much no defense on Zhu Lang. So if we had a more tanky archer commander in that regard, having a bit of health, having a bit of defense, and a normal attack reduction, we could certainly see a good Herman pairing between the Zhu Lang, because Zhu Lang, very squishy commander, lacking in defense a lot. Herman, if he bought some defense and bought some health and even some normal attack reduction, could be a good pairing with Zhu Lang and give him a lot more power on the open field. Now, the final thing that I'll predict in terms of Herman and stats, he might have some rage gain or some skill damage or even normal attack damage increase, because we can see here on his 4th skill, he has a 10% normal damage bonus, which is obviously something they could carry on to his next kit and give him a few more stats there. That wouldn't be out of the question. But he also has a possibility to gain rage, and for that reason, there's a good chance that he does get some form of rage gain, which would allow him to work quite well with a Zulang. And the reason I think that he could get rage gain is because when we look at his talent trees, they've been confirmed to be Archer, Versatility, and Support. And the reason that's interesting is because if he has support, his initial rage gain is going to be quite slow. And if he's going to be an open field commander, he needs good rage gain. And for that reason, I wouldn't be too surprised if they give him some rage gain throughout his kit so that you can get the support tree going. Because I've noticed with my Henry as an example, someone who's running Archer Conquering support, his support tree is really good once you get your first active skill going. But before that, it takes quite a while for that Rejuvenate to really kick in. So what I like to do with my Henry is give him a Horn of Fury to give him extra rage. And if he was obviously running the gear set I would normally put on him, you would see the Horn of Fury, but he's not at the moment. And the Horn of Fury just allows the support tree to get going. But with Herman, if he's got the support tree and he doesn't have some form of rage gain throughout his kit, we'll notice that he does struggle a little bit then in terms of getting his active skill off, which could make him a bit of a poor pairing with commanders like Zulang, who need their active skill to go off to gain more rage and obviously deal damage, because Zulang gains rage whenever he throws his active skill. If Herman wasn't really able to throw it very quickly, it wouldn't work. So Herman with some form of rage gain would work, or even just some form of skill damage would allow him to work well with Zulang or YSG or any commander that really does use AoE, because if we want him as a primary, he's going to have to work with those AoE commanders, and if he doesn't have skill damage, you will notice he may struggle pairing very well with commanders like Zulang, who yes, have a lot of skill damage on their own, but also benefit greatly from having even more skill damage. So Herman's other kit could involve some rage gain or skill damage. I wouldn't be too surprised if even both of those did occur. Now the final thing I'd like to discuss with Herman is what extra stuff would he bring, because we've noticed over the past like 3 to 5 commander releases, every single commander has bought something unique or different. Zulang had pretty much got a double AoE, which has no reduction. Drone Prime had a literal double active skill. Sargon rebought back Tamiris' debuff. Obviously, Lao Che is just completely unique. Hao Che Bing is a cavalry commander who has reduced rage gain, and also the reduced rage gain only occurs when you're out of your city for some time, so he's a very unique commander on his own as well. And out of all these commanders, they're all very, very unique. There's nothing in their kit that is like completely the same as any other commanders. Usually before you could predict, okay, Boudica Prime is going to probably be a little bit like a previous commander. In some ways, she is like a Ramses, for example, or like a Gilgamesh. High active skill damage, high stats, and nothing really too unique besides her skill damage increased debuff. But recently, Lilith has not been taking that view. They've been trying to push the most unique commanders possible. So with Herman's extra thing, the thing that would give him a little bit of what I'd like to say pizzazz, I think that he's going to have some extra buff or some extra debuff or even some form of tankiness, maybe even shielding, because we've never seen archers with shielding. It wouldn't be too out of the question if they want a really tanky archer primary that's going to be very sustainable on the open field, that could go against some of the meta. He may get some shielding effect, he may get something as a temporary skill increase, which would mean he might not get skill damage inside his normal kit, but he might get it as like an increase, like for example how Boudica's active skill debuff works, where she increases the skill damage the target takes. Rather, it just is a skill damage buff. So he's going to gain some more skill damage in that regard. That could be a possibility. Maybe an all damage buff. Maybe even a thing that allows his normal attacks to reduce a target's rage, because I think that Herman may be a rage controlling commander. That could definitely be a possibility, especially if he has silence. He might be able to control rage and manipulate that a little bit if he has some ability that allows him to reduce rage, and I think that could definitely be prevalent throughout his kit, whether it's on an active skill or a secondary skill as a passive skill, or even like I said before, something that allows his normal attacks to reduce a target's rage. So I think that giving him some form of extra debuff or some form of extra buff would be the way they would go. I don't think they're going to add anything unique like a double active skill on Herman. I don't think they're going to go as far as reducing his active skill cost. It might be too overpowered. I think that Herman's going to have some extra buff to himself, whether it be gaining rage quickly like I said before, or reducing a target's rage through normal attack, or even just a passive skill slot silence, because I think only Flavius does that currently in the game, and giving it to an open field commander would definitely be valuable. So Herman with some passive skill debuff is probably the way they will go, or some passive skill buff that really does affect his march, or even surrounding marches, like a shielding effect, or even just normal attack damage taken. Debuffs would also work quite well in his kit. We just don't know where that's going to come in, and that's why for this last thing, the extra thing in his kit, it's very hard to really predict what Herman would do, since it's very, very much reliant on what Lilith does. So that could go any way. They could add more debuffs, more buffs, they could do absolutely nothing. We'll just have to see the extra thing in Herman's kit once he fully releases. Now, the next commander confirmed to be coming to the game for archers is Ashurbanipal, and the thing is, he's a rally commander, archering, conquering, skill tree, and with him, I honestly don't fully know what's gonna come. I don't really have a good idea, since with rallies, Lilith just tends to do anything goes, really. We don't know what's gonna happen. We know he's a rally, at least for what that's worth. And if I were to really predict what I think Ashurbanipal is going to do, first of all, he's going to work well with Henry. I think Henry is going to come really into the open field rally meta because he's got really decent damage factor and he's got a skill damage reduction, which makes him tanky against swarms. But the issue is Henry struggles against a Gorgo and also a Lao Che garrison because it's very, very much smite damage. It struggles against Gorgo Constantine because there's not much skill damage. It's all normal attack. So I think that Ashurbanipal on his active skill will almost be guaranteed to have some form of normal attack damage taken reduction or normal attack damage dealt reduction, because if you want him to work as a rally against a smite meta, he needs to be tanky against that smite meta, and I think his damage factor will be like 2,500 to 2,700 with a normal attack damage taken reduction or dealt reduction, because with him, I think he's going to work with Henry. Henry's going to bring some more anti-swarm, and then Ashurbanipal is going to bring extra protection against some form of a smite garrison. In terms of stats though, I reckon it'll be similar to Henry, maybe a little bit more. Maybe instead of March speed, he gets some counter attack. I think that would be certainly possible, even just more attack, because Henry is already right off the bat a fairly tanky anti-swarm commander between his rally skill and also between his normal skills in general. So I think that when we look at Henry, he'll be tanky, and then Ashurbanipal maybe a little bit more squishy with unique utility like Gilgamesh. Because Gilgamesh, yes, he's part tanky, but really Gilgamesh is high attack with a unique debuff that really countered Xeno garrisons. And Ashurbanipal, I'm going to predict, would be somewhat like Gilgamesh, with a unique debuff that really counters Gorgo garrisons, but he might not be as tanky and he might struggle in a regard unless he's behind a tanky rally like Henry. So Henry with Ashurbanipal is a prediction of a commander combination I'd go with, probably a 2,700 damage factor active skill, which will have some form of normal attack reduction. Other than that, I don't know if he would be open field usable. I think Lilith might push an open field usable rally for archers because we've got Henry, but we didn't get one last time because last time we had Ditto and she's not open field usable pretty much at all. I think Ashurbanipal as an open field usable primary commander would make sense because you'd be able to start replacing commanders like Henry and Boudica on the open field. Not saying most players would, but Lilith would be moving in that direction eventually, and if they wanted to do that, they might be starting with these current commands. So I wouldn't be too surprised if Ashurbanipal actually worked really well in the open field, maybe as a good pairing to Herman Prime, maybe as a good pairing to a commander like YSG or Nebu or Zulang. Any of those would really work, and I think that he'll have some open field potential. Maybe just one rally skill like Henry in the third skill slot, because even with archer rallies, we often see they're used on the open field. Gilgamesh was good in the open field, Nebu was good in the open field, Henry is good on the open field, Tamiris is good on the open field, even Edward of Woodstock, who's technically an open field commander but a rally commander, is good on the open field. So with archer rallies, they tend to always be good on the open field. I wouldn't be surprised if Ashurbanipal is also within that category. So if we're looking at Ashurbanipal, it's probably going to be slightly weaker than Herman Prime, but maybe even slightly stronger than Boudica Prime against the current meta at least, and he would probably hold value in both a rally and open field situation. Now, the final thing I'd like to discuss is how do I reckon that the Ashurbanipal and Herman Prime would really affect both the archer meta and the overall game meta. And really simply, I think that the first thing Herman Prime is going to do, at least for me, is he's just going to replace my Nebuchadnezzar, because Nebu, yes, he's been a loyal companion, he's got me like 4 million kills, but I've said before, he's way too squishy, and I'm just really looking to replace him. And currently, I have a fair few gold heads stashed up, and a Herman Prime release right now wouldn't be too bad to just fully replace my Nebuchadnezzar outright and put him with my YSG, maybe even with my Zulang and my YSG with my Henry. I think Herman's going to be that tanky primary which archers need to replace their Nebuchadnezzar, since archers right now really they just like primaries, not secondaries, and I wouldn't be surprised if Herman Prime is the primary they need. I guess that's kind of a pun right there. And then that means obviously with archers they'll have a decent 3 March murder ball again, and what does that mean for infantry? Well, they are not really going to be threatened by Boudica Prime, maybe a little bit threatened by Henry because he's still all-round tanky even without the skill damage reduction, but I think once Herman Prime goes fully into the game, that's when the infantry will start to face a little bit more resistance on the open field, especially the smite damage. I think it's going to get some type of a, not nerf, but like an indirect nerf from the archer commanders on the open field, and you won't be able to run around rampant with a loud chain, a 3-march infantry mutable, destroying archers and destroying cabs. So infantry will go back into a more like in the middle position, probably around still top of the game, but where they are still going to be countered by something. And then the cabs will probably start to actually fall behind, because if infantry is doing really, really well and archers are doing really, really well, we may see that cabs become not bad or anything, but they become much more level and they're not as above the game as they are from archers right now. Maybe they even become weaker than archers. That might be an exaggeration. I think cabs are still very powerful, but we don't know. If Herman Prime just absolutely dominates Nevsky and dominates Hao Bing, there could be a very real possibility that cabs become the worst troop type or just an equal troop type with the archers. So for now, I think the in-game meta is going to be a less number of infantry just dominating the open field, and then also a more equal amount of cavalry without them fully dominating either. And it will probably bring more balance to the game. That's my prediction. And then hopefully they wait quite a while before they release the next cav commanders. Maybe they do a leadership cycle and a commander thing in between, or their civilization release, something like that. And they keep the meta a little bit stable for like 9 or so months. I think that's where it should go within the future. But then again, we don't know. They might just release Herman Prime and 3 weeks later just drop another cavalry commander. Or they might just release Herman Prime and wait a year before they do anything new. So I think he's going to work well with the archer meta. He's going to be what archers probably need to replace that Nebuchadnezzar. And then I think the rest of the game meta is obviously going to be affected, but it's going to bring it much more equal. No longer infantry being like far and away at the top and cabs being just slightly behind infantry and then archers being 6 levels below. I think it'll be archers pretty much on par with cabs, and then infantry probably still a slight level higher because they will probably have that double AoE Lao Che CPO combo, unless Herman Prime is an AoE commander, which I do doubt. So overall, I think that Ashurbanipal and Herman Prime will be fairly impactful on the meta, and they'll work quite well with the current archer meta. I don't think Lilith will release dud commanders, especially since right now, archers are probably the weakest troop in the game compared to the other 2 troop types. So Herman Prime, I predict, is going to be a nice Nebuchadnezzar replacement. He's going to do well with YSG or Zulang, and he's just going to be an overall powerful open field commander. And I think Ashurbanipal will hold open field potential for the players who do want to get him. So overall, right now, I think the Archer Murderable will be in a better position once these commanders release, and they'll work quite well on the open field, maybe even in one-on-one situations, or even Herman might have an AoE, and I'm just completely wrong. We'll have to see when he releases. And that's pretty much what I think. I think it's going to affect the in-game meta and definitely help the archer meta quite a bit. So now that we've made it to the end of today's video, I'm going to ask everybody to do one quick thing, and that is subscribe to the channel, because I plan to hopefully expertise Herman Prime on the day of release, and maybe even unlock Ashurbanipal when I can. So I'm probably going to expertise both the commanders over the coming year or so, because as you can see, I only own archer commanders at a good level and a usable level. So I'm going to use both the commanders. So that means Ashurbanipal will be one of my next expertise commanders, and Herman Prime will be my upcoming project. So if you want to see me possibly even expertise Herman Prime on the day of release, subscribe to the channel, because unlike Chiscool and other YouTubers who, yes, they do really great testing, I'm going to be doing free-to-play testing and low-spender testing because my equipment is not fully talented. I've got like a full gold set with 1 talented piece, and I've even got just this set of equipment that's pretty trash. So if you want to see me do like free-to-play equipment testing, you want to see my personal opinion of using Herman Prime as someone who doesn't max Crystal Tech, subscribe to the channel, because I'm going to bring the most accurate result on that. Since I main archers, I'm going to be using him as much as I can, and I'm going to get a ton of reports using him. So if you want to see me using Herman Prime on the open field, possibly expertise day 1 with real testing, subscribe to the channel. Not only does it support me, it's also going to support you in investing the right commanders. Now, I just want to say thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.